are, Meridian Therapy is basically the study of the energetic pathways that flow throughout our body of this universal energy, or chi, or prana, or kana, they call it in Japan. They're all different names for this energetic force that we have. And although acupuncture stimulates this energetic pathways by acupuncture points, so they use needles to actually rebalance specific acupressure points. I'm going to teach you acupressure points this afternoon that you can find on the hands and the feet. So they're all very accessible on the hands and the feet, and in fact all of the major meridians begin or end in the fingers or the toes, because they're like peripheries of the body, aren't they? And what's really interesting about these energetic pathways is they do flow through quite random pathways through the body, but they always flow through the meridian that they're named after, such as the gallbladder meridian would flow through the gallbladder, and the stomach meridian innervates through the stomach. So that kind of makes a lot of sense. So acupuncture is one way of stimulating the meridians. Acupressure is another. So acupressure just uses stimulating pressure on a point. You can use vibration, you can use your fingers and thumbs, you can even use like infrared light. They're all ways of stimulating like the meridians and rebalancing this last of the circulatory systems. Like any part of your body can become congested. And what's interesting about the meridians is if there's any emotional blockage, you could say, you've got a tendency to become a certain way of thinking and it's out of balance, it can then manifest physically in one of the corresponding meridians. So it's that emotional connection that's quite interesting, because physically we've learned all about the body, we know all about A&P now, but it's relating it to how do we physically get out of balance when emotionally and mentally we're out of balance. So that's kind of like the last missing link of the jigsaw. So out of interest, has any of you had acupuncture?
Yes.
And was it effective?
Very.
And did you get told what meridians were particularly out of balance for you?
No.
It
was just literally a pain response treatment or a muscle relaxant treatment. It wasn't like a specific to this, but it did work very, very well for pain management.
Yeah. Was it effective for you?
Yeah, I had it on my back, injured my back through work, and it was really effective, definitely. They didn't say about the meridians, but
no.
I did feel the effects quite quickly.
Yeah,
and
me too.
Yeah, it was
Very
really
quickly.
good.
Yeah, I mean, acupuncture is one of those therapies that somehow managed to jump through the hoops to become a really recognised complementary therapy in its own right, and is practiced by a lot of GPs, available in some hospitals.
Yeah,
but the research is still lax, and it's always interesting to me to see how it's somehow managed to become this, absolutely recognised and validated therapy when reflexology hasn't. And you do find a lot of these Chinese medicine shops have high street presence in most towns, and they seem to be unregulated, shall we say.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is the acupuncture meridian therapy. Chi is as old as, again, reflexology. 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, the Chinese were writing about this universal life force. The passageway of chi throughout the body has to remain balanced, otherwise things become stagnant and unwell. You get the physical symptoms of congestion. So a Chinese, medicine practitioner will always look into all aspects of a person, particularly it's very holistic as a therapy, and they look into keeping your meridians in balance through diet and lifestyle and emotionally to keep you well. In fact, Chinese medicine doctors only get paid when they keep you well. When you become unwell, they don't get paid, which is a complete, absolutely opposite way to way our health service works. So before we go a bit too further, let's just have a quick look at the science behind the meridians, because it is quite a scientific approach, even though it's quite difficult to understand because we can't see this energy. It's hard to understand it's there. Wouldn't you agree? And there's been no research published that shows you where these meridian pathways actually are under any MRI or CT scan. Nothing's ever been able to detect that these meridians are there. but you certainly can feel them. You can feel them in the acupressure points, and you can feel if they're out of balance just from what we learned this afternoon. So firstly, yes, this page talks about the difference between Chinese medicine and Western medicine is it looks at the individual. So rather than treating the symptom, which is what we tend to do in our NHS, and we all have different departments, don't we, underneath any hospital. So if you are a person suffering from lots of different symptoms that probably all relate with each other, you go and see one department, and then another, and then another, and they never put the joins together to look at you. Where are you at right now? Why have you become unwell at this point in your life? Whereas holistic therapy, you remember what holos means? Holistic means whole, as in like the whole person, where they are at, where they come from, emotionally, physically, mentally, even spiritually, all aspects of a person. So you can say reflexology is a holistic therapy, and the Chinese would look at the individual and not the symptoms. So I think that makes a big difference, doesn't it? We've got the opportunity to look at the individual too, haven't we, with reflexology? We don't treat the symptoms as such, we treat the imbalances, and we put everything together. So what's interesting about this energy, the Chinese have divided it into the key sources of the energy that are within us. So fundamentally, the universal life force is the energy of the universe. You channel that through you in Reiki. You ask for the universal life force to flow through you, into you, and to help the person on the receiving end, don't you?
Yeah.
So it's channeling this energy, essentially. But you could also say that it's actually quite clever. Some of this energy comes from our genetics, from our parents, from our ancestors. That's what's called Jing Qi. You've got nutritive Qi, which is from the quality and the variation of food that we eat. That makes a lot of sense too, doesn't it? Because we literally are what we eat, and that energy comes from food. And you've also got clear Qi, which comes from the air that we breathe and the quality of the air. So all of these are feeding us nutrients, aren't they? And that's where we get the energy from. Okay. So energy can be measured. You have got kinetic energy is the vibration that everything vibrates at, and it can be measured on this electromagnetic spectrum, and everything has a frequency, including ourselves. You can see that low down frequency, you've got like radio waves, which are easy to hear, but high up on the frequency scale, you've got things like X-rays and gamma rays, which we don't necessarily feel, but they still affect us. What's interesting is the sun has been giving out a lot of solar energy, hasn't it? It's been having solar flares sent out like huge amounts of energy that eventually travel to Earth in huge gamma rays that have an effect on everything. So sometimes we're affected by these, things going on in the universe that we don't maybe necessarily understand. Why are things not working today? Technology doesn't work, things are going wrong, and it's all affected by these frequencies. Which you could say, we're not aware of it. Are we aware of the 4G, 5G, mobile frequencies that are everywhere now? Everything's got a frequency, including a still rock you can measure as a frequency. In fact, if you turn over the page, you can see where we resonate. We're somehow quite low down on the frequency scale. So we supposedly resonate between 7 and 10 hertz, 5 and 10 hertz, and it depends on the activity. But you could also put it a little bit more specific, is your frequency that you emanate is to do with what your brain waves are thinking of. So if you're in a meditative state, you're probably going to have quite a low frequency. Your brain is at a very relaxed level of brain waves, rather than if you are actively concentrating on something like hopefully you are right now, and it's like a high frequency of your brain waves. So everything is measurable. So that is not like an airy fairy idea, it's absolute science. And just going back that we are electrochemical, mechanical beings that make us part of our human being frequency. Even oxygen, carbon, hydrogen and nitrogen will all have their own frequencies. And each of these elements put together then make us part of our human organism. So without spending too much time on science, our brainwave frequencies are interesting because you could say that when you're having a therapy like reflexology, you go very much from being in very fast gamma wave frequency down the scale to beta, alpha, theta, and even possibly down to this very deep REM type sleep state of the delta waves. And I see people do that very quickly in reflexology. They come in very wired and tense, and it may be, 5-10 minutes? You can see them that they have so completely relaxed, their face is relaxed, maybe their mouth is open a little bit, and their breathing is heavy. And it's that I found so fascinating. In such a short space of time, the stimulation of the feet and all those peripheral nerves and the fact it's relaxing. Reflexology is an incredibly powerful tool to lower the frequency rate. And that delta brainwave state is so restorative. It is like having a really amazing night's sleep.
And when they're twitching, what state are they in?
That's that REM delta state.
Yeah.
It's involuntary.
Yeah.
And they're not even aware that they're doing it, they've got no control. And it's like a release, isn't it?
So that's delta.
In fact, what you might find when you're working some of the acupressure points, which I find really fascinating in my practice, is when they are out of balance or congested, you tend to find that it's usually the opposite foot just releases. You have this involuntary spasm, and it makes me think that was significant, that point. There was a release on the other side.
Oh, see, I've noticed clients that twitch, but I've never associated it with the giving of the treatment. So
I have one client that does it. She does it every single time.
So is it important to note the reflex that it's on whilst that response is happening? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, the fact it happened absolutely there.
Note that.
When we're pressing on that point, something has shifted and
Yeah.
withdrawn from the body.
Mm.
And you get that particularly with the acupressure points.
I've made plenty of notes that the client's reactions has been twitching, but I've never noted it against which reflex it was at the time. So I must try and do that more in the future.
Yeah, you'll find it fascinating.
Mm.
So, basic principles of Chinese traditional medicine are that everything has to have a positive and a negative force, including ourselves. Everything in nature will have a yin and a yang element to them. And what's really interesting is that polarities in opposites. You've got yin, which is the dark side, the shadowy side of the mountain. It's damp, it's cold, it's negative, it's female. Whereas the yang side of the mountain is sunny and positive and masculine, and it doesn't mean that it's any better or worse than the yin side, and the two cannot be separated from each other. And in fact, you have to keep them in complete balance within yourselves or within the elements of the meridians for everything to be kept sort of like just as it should be. Things can become too yin or things can become too yang, and that means they're out of balance. In fact, what's really interesting about this, I'm sure we've all seen this symbol, is it's so profoundly like an atom. The Chinese didn't know about atoms 4,000 years ago, but if you split an atom, you have, on the next page, two opposing elements. You have a proton and an electron. A proton is a positive charge, an electron is a negative charge. And that's the smallest building blocks of matter of everything, isn't it? So surely that's what yin and yang is about. With a neutron being like the earth of a plug. It's kind of like the element that keeps the two in check between each other. So everything has this positive and negative charge, doesn't it? So I think they understood that with the yin and the yang. And then, when you split up everything that's on this planet, you have the 5 elements. So everything is made up of these 5 elements. You've got earth, fire, water, wood and metal. Slightly different to the Ayurvedic ways of thinking, which has earth, fire, water, air and space. But these two types of ancient ways of thinking and natural healthcare both grew alongside each other at the same time. They're both the same 4,000 years old of knowledge. There's just slightly different, big differences of how they end up treating people. You could say that the Chinese use a lot of animals and animal-based medicine, whereas in Ayurvedic medicine in India it's purely plant-based. And that's always been the big difference for me. But the elements are quite interesting, that the way that they relate to each other. So can you see the outside of the circles you've got arrows showing how they affect each other. So the outside arrows show you this is like the maternal influence, like the motherly influence of it is called the Shen cycle, and it's nurturing. So this nurturing element, it means that water nurtures wood, helps wood to grow, doesn't it? Wood nurtures the fire, and the fire will grow. Fire nurtures earth, and earth nurtures metal, and metal nurtures water. And that makes a great deal of sense in a way that how the elements affect each other. But inside you've got directions of arrows flowing slightly differently, and that is the key cycle, which you could say is like the fatherly influence, which is more dominating and controlling. So in that respect, some of the elements control each other, as in earth controls water, water controls fire. So it will dampen it down rather than nurture it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So without overcomplicating it, because there's so much information when you come to learning about the elements, and even all the elements have a yin and a yang part of it, but you could say all of the elements are divided up into two meridians that work together. So if you ever look to start with the earth element, you have got the spleen and the stomach meridians. Now, one is yin and one is yang. And these are all to do with like the food that we eat and the nutrients that we gain from the earth. But imbalances of this earth as an element can affect the spleen and the stomach. And you might find there are tendencies for overthinking, over-obsessive behaviour, cynical, overactive thoughts. It's this overactivity of the brain because, as you can see on the stomach meridian particularly, it goes through the head and the brain, as well as through the stomach. And the spleen pancreas meridian actually goes all the way from the big toe up through the reproductive organs, through the spleen, through the neck, and through internally through the head and the brain too. So all of that pathway can be affected if your earth element is out of balance or one of those meridians is out of balance. Meridians become out of balance, one of them is excessive, will deplete the other one. They work together.
Oh no.
So you
That
will either
makes a lot of
find
sense.
you'll either find that your spleen is excessive
Yeah.
and your stomach is depleted, or the other way around. So then you've got the metal elements. You've got the lungs and the large intestine as meridians, and they again are both working together. They're both excretory organs. They're affected by, we've talked a lot about the lungs, haven't we? Holding on to emotions like grief and bitterness, and not being able to let go of things that are no longer good for us, as in like constipation. Things manifest, you're holding on to the rubbish that you just should be letting go of. You would expect to find that the metal is out of balance and the lungs are congested, as indeed the large intestine as an organ, but also the meridian pathways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then you've got water, the flow of water throughout the body, being the kidneys and the bladder as meridians. And as we said this morning, these are all to do with fear, worry and anxiety, will affect the flow of chi through those two meridians. And then you're going to find congestion through the kidney and the bladder. And what's interesting is particularly the bladder meridian really follows the spine very closely. So any back problems you'd expect to be the bladder as being out of balance. And the kidney goes through the pelvic area as well as the lungs and the kidney itself. Then you've got the got the liver and the gallbladder being wood. These are two interesting meridians because they're all to do with like your will and determination and anger, even faith of yourself. So the liver is very much a catalyst for change that can be affected by anger and heat and irritability. You expect someone who's got toxic liver to be really aggressive. There's that kind of irritability. And the gallbladder is often to do with being way too controlling over things, way too sort of perfectionist, organised, everything trying to be kept just as it should be, not being able to go with the flow as much as you should. So gallbladder, chi, very much, will and determination. And then lastly, you've got your fire meridian points. Now all the fire meridians are on your hands, as well as the lungs and intestine. All the other ones are on the feet. So you've got 4 meridians in the fire element, and they are the heart, the pericardium, the small intestine, and the triple burner. You might think, what is the triple burner? And it's got 3 effects on the body, the 3 circulatory systems of your blood, your lymph, and your hormones. So that's quite a powerful meridian because it has influence over all 3 of those circulatory systems. So 14 major meridians do follow random pathways through the body. It has nothing to do with your knowledge of anatomy and physiology. Forget what you've all just learned over the last 6 months. And this is like an energetic pathway of how things flow. So I always find it hard to actually remember exactly where each meridian flows through because they are very difficult to remember. They don't follow any set pattern. But always to remember, they do flow through the organ that they are called after. But say, for example, like the heart meridian, we can't possibly use any acupressure points on the heart itself. It's deep, isn't it? It's too far away from the surface. So what you find, you've got internal branches of each meridian, which flow through the internal organs, but then you've got external branches, which are normally accessible on the arms and the legs and the face and the cranium. So most acupuncture is done on the head, face, and the arms and legs. Is that what you've experienced?
I did actually have a lot on the area.
On the shoulder back, itself.
But around the neck especially, and yes, the face as well.
I had it on my ankles and my hands to get the line of chi through that when I had it with that one woman, but that really felt uncomfortable on my ankles. But yeah.
But accessing any of the acupressure points along this pathway will help to rebalance it.
Yeah.
So for us as reflexologists, we can access easily the ones on the feet and the hands.
Yeah.
Say for example, you have got spleen 1 is the very beginning of the spleen meridian. We can access spleen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes all the way up to spleen 27, but we're just going to focus on the ones that relate to the feet and the hands.
Is there a reason that they're this colour? Because the aura colours, or is that just...
It relates to the elements, so blue is water,
Okay.
earth is yellow. And then, it's interesting to look at the 24-hour cycle of chi. Now, it makes so much sense. The Chinese have got such wisdom. So you say that all of this energy should flow unimpeded throughout your body in 24 hours. Let's start the day where chi will flow. At 7 o'clock in the morning, it's going to start flowing through your stomach meridian. It's got 2 hours to flow through the stomach. And that's when we should be eating breakfast, getting up, concentrate, short bit of exercise, get yourself out. Followed by chi flows through the spleen between 9 and 11, and it shows you about how clarity of thought and how thinking. The spleen is very much active in your brain. Hence, mental health disorders will be spleen disorders. Then you've got the heart between 11 and 1, where you've eaten lunch, you've got lots of energy, blood is circulating through the heart, followed by, I love this bit, between 1 and 3, chi flows through your small intestine, which is when you're digesting your food from lunch. Feel a bit dozy and sleepy. That time.
Always.
Don't we always
Get the
want
3
to
o'clock
have
slump.
3 o'clock
Always
slump?
get that.
Everybody does.
Past 2 some.
Yeah.
But it's during this time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, we're about that time
I am now, yeah, I am, not gonna lie.
Exactly 20 past 2. But then, if you do allow yourself to have that quiet time,
Yeah.
you wake up between 3 and 5 when the chi is flowing through your bladder, so energy is restored. You remove your waste, as in, urinate, and you start to work and study again. And then you've got chi between the kidney between 5 and 7, so stores nutrients, builds your bone marrow, and it's like supper time. Then pericardium between 7 and 9. I like this one too. So it's like protecting yourself, like reading, sex, and self-love. And then you've got the triple burner between 9 and 11, all about endocrine rebalancing and getting sleepy. And then hopefully you're in bed by between 11 and 1, which is where your gallbladder and the liver and the lung and the large intestine, which are all excretory organs, will be working quietly on your behalf whilst you're asleep. And doing all of that processing of all of the daily nutrients, getting them sent to the right places. You should have digested your food by then, shouldn't you? And you should be having a deep sleep. What's interesting is you might find yourself or any of your clients have a time of the day when they feel particularly, like you say, rubbish. So whether you've got depleted water element, where your bladder energy is depleted, it's where you feel the most tired this time of the afternoon. But it's also time of the afternoon when you should be tired.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But clients can tend to find that they wake up at a certain time of the night, or you might find that yourself, and it's always the same time. It's always between 3 and 4 in the morning. You think, okay, so that's like, that's your lung, or it could be your liver being out of balance. And it just tells you that it's excessive, probably, or depleted, but the fact that they wake up at that same time, you have to look into that meridian. So that's one way of determining whether a meridian is out of balance. And it also gives you a chart there of why do I wake up feeling so ill or feeling like at a certain time of day, indicating that meridian is the one that you need to keep in balance. It even gets more complicated than that, and I'm not going to go into it too much, because you've got every single element has characteristics of the season that affects it most, the climate, the organs that are affected, as in the sense organs, which body tissue manifests like imbalance, what emotions affect it, what colour, and even the taste.
I don't have that page, unfortunately, in my handout.
Oh, you have that one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think I've got the tutor copy, it says on there.
That's what I've got it there.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's finish the video here for the theoretical aspects of Meridian Therapy, because I want to save